All right, welcome into Carps Corner after the bye week. We've kind of been apart for a while, but excited to be back. Excited to kind of get things cranking here. Second half of the season is upon us. Buckeyes now back at home. After a litany of home games to start the season, a lot of night games. Finally had Michigan State on the road. They'll be at home again before having a handful of road games here to wrap out the final parts of the regular season slate. But some pretty exciting stuff as we go here, looking at Iowa on the precipice of that. What do the Hawkeyes bring to the table? What all is there? We've got the mailbag today. I've got some Ryan Day sound. We'll do a lot more previewing of the game in the next show, leading right into it. But like I said, there's some Ryan Day sound, some Jim Knowles, things that he was saying that I want to get into. Take a look at how good this Buckeye offense and defense really are, especially how good this Buckeye offense is in the red zone, because I think that's pretty impressive right there. And then also I'll open up with this, tell a little story. Like there's only one stadium that was in the original, the original Big Ten, the 11 teams, because Nebraska, Maryland, and Rutgers were not in it when I played. And we played everywhere. There's only one place I never won, and that was Kinnick, and that was Iowa. Now I understand this game's going to be at home. Beat Iowa at home my freshman year. Beat them, didn't play them my freshman year. How could I forget that? Won a co-Big Ten championship because they went undefeated as well. Beat them at home my sophomore year. I lost there on the road my junior year and got beat down 31-13, I believe. And it was 14-6 at halftime. They poured it on in the second half, and then beat them my senior year. And so Iowa has always been, for a long time, very similar to Wisconsin. Tough, run the football, physical up front, play good defense. They went about it in a little bit different ways on the defensive side, but they wanted to get after you, and they wanted to let you know, like, when you played them, it was going to be a full day's work. So my junior year, we go over there. I think it's 14-6 at halftime, and we just get boat raced in the second half. Like I said, it's the only place I didn't win. And I watched this. We're playing them. It's a 4th and 1. They choose to go for it, and I believe it's their last touchdown they score. I think it's 24-6 or something at this point, or maybe it was 38-13. I'm not sure. But they have the ball around the 50-yard line. It's 4th and 1. They decide to go for it. All right, hey, I get it. You want to stop them. They want to run the clock out, all good. But they had a guy named Drew Tate playing quarterback. And it's amazing that this is the case, because if you look at Iowa's offense now, well, no one's going to say it's explosive. No one's going to confuse it for even being explosive at all. But on a 4th and 1, up 3 scores in the fourth quarter, they elect to go play action, drop back, take a shot over the top, score a touchdown, strike up the band. Drew Tate, their starting quarterback, goes running down the field playing the air guitar. I mean, big, huge, over the top, running down there. I remember looking at that, and they're cheering. People at Kinnick, they're pounding on the mats that are right behind you, and it was the worst experience ever. And so, we obviously had Texas that next offseason, but as much as it was Texas we wanted to beat early in the year, we wanted to beat Iowa. And it's because of the disrespect that Drew Tate showed and that damn air guitar. So the next year we get a chance to play them up in Columbus. And I'll never forget, it was still a pretty close game. And someone I think even brought this up to me as we were talking about, it's one of their first games they went to. And we were just trying to hammer Drew Tate, stuff the run, be tougher than them. And when Drew Tate dropped back and we blitzed, make sure he felt it, because he wasn't a super big dude. And it was awesome. It was still, I believe, end of the second quarter-ish, end of the first half, somewhere in there. And we'd been playing pretty well. Offensively, we've been moving the football. And they put together a little bit of a drive. And they're inside, maybe like the 28-yard line, within field goal range, 25 maybe. And it was our opportunity to see if we could ultimately come out and get a stop. They've been driving it. It's 3rd down or whatever. They get the ball. They keep driving. Maybe they get points before halftime. And they send AJ and I blitz off the edge. He peels in, tries to escape, sees me coming, looks over, tries to escape to AJ, peels back to me, and we both sack him, probably back at like the 45-yard line, knocked him way out of field goal range. It was 3rd down. He gets up, throws the ball down, and AJ and I are pumping the crowd, and AJ himself picks the ball up and walks over. I'm surprised. He probably got a flag, and goes to hand it to Drew Tate like you forgot something. Tate smacks it out of his hand, walks off the field. And I was like, at that point, we'd finally got the revenge. We knew we had the game in the bag then because he was a mess. We were moving the ball on offense, and they couldn't do anything on defense or against our defense at that point. But it was so great to see that. And so I've always had this special place in my heart, a little slice of sports hatred for Wisconsin based upon that and what happened the year before and what transpired that day. I want to get to some Ryan Day and Jim Knowles, some of the things that they said coming into the game. So I started talking about this Iowa defense, which is, top 5 in many statistical categories. I think number 1 overall in total yardage coming into this week. Here we go.
No, I think they're very good. Been working hard and trying to figure out how to attack them, but they're very good in what they do. And just the minute you think that they're not going to change it up, they do, and very well coached. So there's a reason why they're ranked so high in and year out. They're one of the better defenses in the country. They do a great job, and so this will be certainly a challenge for the offense.
Well coached and consistent. I mean, that's what you're going to get. When you think you know what they have coming, they'll throw something else at you. But I was going to line up. They're going to do what they do. They're going to play the style that they play. They'll have some change up here and there, but they've been doing the same thing for 20 years. They understand their pathway to victory, and they understand how it works. So it's going to be important to play really well against them. One of the areas that struggled a little bit this season have been the cornerbacks. So Ryan Day had something to say about the corners.
Yeah, I think they've been working hard. I think they've been, working hard at practice. I think they understand where they need to get better. We'll find out more on Saturdays. That's the ultimate test. The preparation's there. I think the attention's there. I think the work's there. And that's the way it is for all of us.
Hey, they're working hard. They're doing everything they can. They're dedicating themselves to the game. But ultimately, the ultimate arbiter of this situation is going to be the reality that transpires on Saturday. Now, probably not this Saturday, because I don't think you're going to be threatened by Iowa. And, talking to some of the guys, especially in the secondary, I'm like, if these guys double move you, you're in trouble. Play as aggressive as you can on them because you shouldn't be able to get run by. Spencer Petras is nothing to write home about at quarterback. And offensively on the outside, they're pedestrian at best. So that should not be an issue. So the defensive backs, this should be a really good game for them because this offense isn't good. We won't probably see what they're able to really do until we watch them play Maryland, maybe Penn State. But he also had some stuff to say about Jackson Smith-Njigba, JSN, and his returning and what that could potentially mean for the other guys.
Take some stress off the other guys, which they've taken on a lot in these first 6 games. I think if you 7 weeks ago said, here's what's going to happen, you would have realized that's a pretty heavy burden for those guys. Special teams, a lot of reps at their position, and I think they've done well and benefited from that. I think we all have, but getting him back certainly would take some stress off of them, and I think then we'll be at full strength.
So if JSN returns, that obviously would help a lot of people, and the receivers are doing just fine. The receiving core is great. Hartline's done a fantastic job. But if you get him back, obviously that helps out everyone else immensely. It takes some stress. It takes some pressure off of them. There are people who are saying that Jackson Smith-Njigba is just going to shut it down for the season. We watched it happen with Nick Bosa before. You've seen it across college football. I'm not one of those folks. I'm of the belief, just watching Jackson practice, watching him interact over the last couple of years, like, he's a dude that loves football, and guys that love football and love their teammates. And it's not a knock if they don't play, but he's a guy that wants to be out there. He wants to be 100% healthy. I would anticipate him playing this week unless there's a setback. I think a lot of people do. But I don't believe there's people who've talked about him shutting it down for the year. I don't believe that is the case. And would this offense struggle without him? No, they've been really good without him. But he's just one more weapon, and he's a veteran presence that makes it that much easier. So I believe he's going to play against Iowa unless something happens. And that's not to say that, something else, couldn't go awry, but I believe that he's going to be okay, and I think he's going to play. One of the other big things, missing penalties, getting a lot of holdings or holdings that aren't called. So Ryan had something to say about that.
Every week we have, back and forth. Bill Carolla does an unbelievable job of communicating with us. And, there's some penalties that, you can go back and forth on, and they try to do the best they can. But certainly that one's tough, and pass interference is difficult, and those type of things. And so we'll send them in to get clarification. But then there's other ones that, hit a little bit closer to home that we try to have better clarity on. But I've just been impressed, though, with everybody's communication on the field, and also their communication during the week when we send stuff in, getting back from the conference office.
Here's the reality. There are a ton of holdings that are ultimately happening in a game. Very few of them get called, but it seems like there's a lot. So what is Ryan? They turn him into the commissioner. They've got a good relationship. They talk about it. People can see it. Honestly, I mean, it's not costing them games at this point, but hopefully at some point here in the future, that thing gets remedied. Jim Knowles, also wanted to hear from him a little bit, because the one thing Iowa always seems to have good players is tight ends. They've got Luke Lachey being one of them, the son of Jim Lachey, Ohio State All-American, Pro Bowler in the NFL, Super Bowl champ. You hear him on the calls on the radio on 97.1. Jim does a great job. His son's at Iowa, but Jim Knowles had something to say about their tight ends.
No, it's a concern. I mean, this is the best tight end. Two of them, they're all good, like you said, since Notre Dame. So definitely need to be aware of it. You have to contest. It's if you give those guys too much space, they kind of body you up and make catches. So you got to have tight coverage. I think that's the key.
So here we go. It's the best group they've seen since Notre Dame. And I don't think anybody's going to confuse that. Like, that's the reality of what they're dealing with. They go 2 to 3 guys deep, like Knowles was saying, and they're big physical dudes. Like, they may not always be the most like speedy guys or super athletic, but a lot of times that's where Iowa's playmakers ultimately are. Their playmakers are the ones who are in at the tight end position. You go back to the 2017 game, they had a pair of ones that were pretty good. They got drafted in the first round. And because of that, that's what led to that big day. So they have to do something to be able to ultimately slow them down and to make sure they can get them. So you want to keep a body on them. You don't want to give them space. Bill Parcells used to always say, space is the enemy. So you've got to find a way to cut that space down and do a good job of holding it down. So well done on that. That's a great thought by Mr. Jim Knowles right there, the defensive coordinator. He knows how to stop tight ends. He's good. They'll have some different packages. They'll have some different things to go in there. Wouldn't be surprised to see some 3 linebackers on there. I know a lot of people worry about this. Jim Knowles is smart. He is pragmatic. Just because he runs a 4-2-5 doesn't mean that he can't put a third linebacker on the field if he needs to, or maybe a bigger safety like a Sonny Styles, someone that's going to be 6'4", 225, who has the size of a linebacker and the athleticism of a safety. So there's still that ability right there. Before we get to the mailbag, 2 other things that I want to throw up. Number one, I'm going to throw this up here. Talking about Ohio State's red zone. Thanks to my guy, RJ Young here. The Buckeyes, when they have the ball inside the red zone, they score it. 29 out of 29 times they have scored. 27 of those have been touchdowns, which is bigger. It's not just red zone scoring percentage. It's red zone touchdown scoring percentage. 27 of the 29. They have scored TDs on 30 of their last 38 possessions. This Buckeye offense is a behemoth right now. But the thing to focus on is that red zone touchdown percentage. Because in the red zone, everything happens faster. It's quicker. The windows are tighter. There's really no deep safeties, so the safeties fill faster in the run. You can double team receivers. The windows are small. It's a lot harder. And so CJ's been really good down there. You watch Mayan Williams, Trey, they've been good down there. There was the tight ends, they've all been good down there. The receivers, everybody's been getting it done. And it's the versatility that you're seeing in the red zone, and then especially the low red inside the 5, inside the 10, that Ryan Day has done such a great job of. I know we heard from Jim Knowles. I want to throw this up. My guy, Jay Book, coming out of the press conference, Ryan Day said, Jim Knowles had an affinity for Columbus, has a lot of friends here. The goal was to keep him here as long as we could. And I think, listen, people said it's past tense. I think is what it should have been. Jim Knowles seems happier. I'm not trying to dive into the guy's mind. He loves ball. People like coaching for Ryan Day because Ryan Day hands them the clipboard and says, "This is your job. Go do it to the very best of your ability. Tell me what support you need from me, but you're the subject matter expert. And if you don't get it done, then we'll start having conversations. But you tell me how you envision this going and what you want to do. And if I agree with that vision, boom, own it. And so he gives them a lot of autonomy. And so Jim Knowles probably loves that thing. If you're a defensive coordinator and you play for an offensive head coach, it's fantastic. As long as the offensive head coach is hands off. And that's what Ryan is. Calls him the CEO of the defense, the head coach of the defense. That's you over there. You take control of it. And you know what? you know what? Ryan's pretty happy. You have a top 15 scoring defense, and you have a top 10 total defense in the country. And that's only going to get better because you're playing Iowa this week. And I'll give you my score prediction in the next show, but my goodness, if you give up more than 10 points to these guys, that would be disheartening based upon what that they've shown. Not disrespect to Iowa, but based upon what they've shown this year, not a great situation. Mailbag. Oh, goodness. Do you think the injuries this year have been partially from elevated intensity, physicality, and practices? They vowed not to get out toughed against Michigan. And that seems to be, to me at least, from Steve Miller, part of the strategy making practices tougher. I will say this. Ryan had a renewed sense of the toughness, and he talks about it all the time, competitive stamina. And so in camp, yeah, he tried to make it as hard as possible. At certain times, you ebb and flow, you dial it up and down, but guys need to experience strain. And when you don't have two-a-days, it's really hard to do that. They still, I mean, Urban called them Bloody Tuesdays. I don't know if you go that far, but you see it every week with their renewed sense to run the ball and to make sure they're stopping the run. That's where that toughness comes from. So, Steve, I don't think there's really more injuries this year. Maybe some of them are more visible because it's the running backs or it's JSN, or something like that, maybe a safety. But they've been pretty healthy for the most part as I knock on the table there, especially critical positions. So hopefully that trend continues. Any thoughts about the revolving door, kick return or punt return, who would get the nod back there full time? Well, a kick punt returner, you got to rotate a lot of guys in, and a lot of teams professionally in college do that. Usually keep the same kick returners. And, it's a little bit unique. Chip Tradenham's been back there. I know he plays linebacker, but he played running back, and he's fast as heck. And you want to find and try to carve out roles for guys and let them have some ownership. And so Parker Fleming, he's doing a good job. They'll be better, I guarantee you, with special teams the second half of the season, much better than they were the first. And that's not a knock. Like, they're going to get some things cleaned up. They haven't had any of the egregious mistakes. So if you look a lot across college football, I mean, whether it's blocking out from the wing on a PAT, which is terrible. It gives up a block for an extra point or a field goal. What happened against Bama and Tennessee, guys trying to pick up the ball because I think it's an opportunity to advance it because it could have been a dead ball. Touched by Tennessee. Like there have been, like what you saw in the Broncos and Chargers Monday night game, like all of these special teams blunders, they haven't been bad. There's been some misfielding and some different things and some penalties, but they'll get that cleaned up. I firmly believe that. How many points do I think Iowa will score against Ohio State? Less than 10. And if it's more than that, I'll be severely disappointed. This defense is really good. And Iowa's offense, nothing to write home about. This isn't the Iowa teams, just like it wasn't the Wisconsin team that we all know so well that, if he's going to come out there, try to run it 45 times, roll up 180, 200 yards rushing, throw some play action shots over the top and make it really tough for you. They haven't proven to be that, and they weren't really that last year. They were ranked second in the nation at one point, but that's mostly because their defense was fantastic and turned the football over for them. Based on his body of work this season so far, is it safe to say Paris Johnson Jr. will receive a first-round grade? I think Paris Johnson I think he's a first-round NFL talent. I've got to talk to some scouts to kind of see what his grade's going to come in at. I believe it's going to be high. And if you believe like whether or not he's leaving, I would anticipate he would. That's not me knowing anything other than the fact that he's a really talented player. I know he loves it playing in Ohio State. He likes it here. Great team guy, very philanthropic, but he's going to be a first rounder at one of the most profitable positions in the NFL. And he has all the ability and athleticism to succeed. So I can't imagine him not getting drafted in the first round unless he struggles mightily. But tell me this, have you seen him give up a sack this year? Like, I'm struggling to watch him get beat because haven't seen it. And then do we think finally, and this is jumping ahead 6 weeks, do you think we'll beat Michigan? They are too one-dimensional of an offense. They are. We'll see how they continue to develop with J.J. McCarthy. Cade McNamara is on the sideline now, so that gives them a little bit more explosiveness from the quarterback position. But they're a tough team. And that's why Ryan Day is continuing to run the ball, and making sure that everybody understands what they need to do to be able to have success And ultimately, you can't make the CFP if you don't win the Big Ten. Maybe you can, but you don't want to back into it like that. And you got to beat the team up north to be able to do that. You have to beat Michigan, and you have them at home. And Ryan, I promise you this, wants to make sure that they'll be ready to rock for that game. That is why, look at all the buildup. Just watch the things that I've been saying about running the ball and the toughness and all these things. Even when it may not matter for the scheme of that game, it's the competitive stamina of being able to do it in the future. So that's it for this edition of Carps Corner. We're going to get our own handle for this, so it'll be easier to see. You'll be easier to log in, and continue to subscribe, like, share it. We're growing this. People said I shouldn't call it Carps Corner. People don't know who Carp is. Well, maybe we'll call it the Bobby Carpenter Show, and we'll just still throw it on there with Carps Corner, because that's what it ultimately is. That was a nickname for me, and I know it may be confusing to some, but I appreciate you tuning in. And we'll have the next show previewing the Iowa game and some of the other big games this weekend. Not quite as good a slate as last time, but still a pretty good one. Thanks.